Presentations. Whether you're a working adult or a student at school, this is something that you'll probably have to do from time to time. So the question is, what makes a good presentation? What are some of the skills you need to create a presentation that isn't completely boring? Now, I wouldn't exactly claim to be an expert on this subject, but I do happen to use presentations from time to time. I have received a lot of feedback, in this area. So I thought, hey, let's give it a shot. Let's tackle this question from my perspective. I'd like to thank YouTube user Rick Hernandez for actually coming up with this suggestion. Despite the fact that I've actually used presentations a lot, I never thought about doing a video like this, so thanks for the inspiration. Anyway, you're watching another Random Wednesday episode on 0612 TV. Hello and welcome back to another Random Wednesday episode. So before we begin by actually talking about some tips and general guidelines I use for creating presentations, let's first talk about, my general mindset towards the matter. What my principles are in actually, creating content for delivery. Simply put, my entire educational principle is centered around the fact that I want to make my content appeal to intuition. Basically, I believe that, as long as the learning process is an easy one, it will be a fruitful one. The way I put this into effect is to use pictures and visual aids a lot, which of course ties in very nicely to the content of this episode. And as you would probably have picked up from what I said so far, this video is going to have some emphasis on the educational aspects of actually, coming up with a presentation. And also because, I deal with subjects in computer science a lot, things are going to lean in that sort of technical direction as well. However, having said that, hopefully the tips I share today will be applicable to basically any form of presentation. So yeah, with that preamble in mind, today we have 3 tips, 3 very broad but hopefully easy to apply tips. So with that said, let us jump into our very first tip. First, broadly speaking, is to actually paint pictures with your slides. Now, I've seen this happen way too often where there's actually, some sort of a disconnect between the person and the slides. They seem to be two completely separate entities that don't have anything to do with each other. So you don't want that to happen. What you also don't want is the polar opposite, where the slides and what you are saying are exactly the same. If you actually mirror the slides, chances are people are going to be reading faster than you can actually present your content. So don't do that either. Ideally, what needs to happen is that what you say and what the slides are showing must actually complement each other. Neither one is a complete source of information, but when put together, not only is the information complete, it is also clear and easy to understand. What you should aim to do is you should create a double-pronged attack so that what you say actually complements what they see. What you're going to want to try and do is to minimize having words in your slides as much as possible. I mean, words are already coming out of your mouth, and if they sort of have to read things off the slide as well, it's going to actually create a bit of an information overload kind of situation. Of course, this is one of those avoid it when possible cases. Sometimes it's just not possible to avoid. So what you want to do is to minimize the overload as much as possible. Whenever possible, try and use graphics, try and actually show relations between different concepts. This is particularly applicable in areas like computer science, say data structures, in which many concepts are actually spatial in nature. In this sort of context, there tends to be a lot of underlying theory that tends to be very complex, and what you want to do, at least at the beginning, is to hide all those details away. Let your viewers actually see a picture first, allow them to first understand what is happening before you go into telling them how things are being done. And you can do that by taking advantage of the medium, by showing pictures. Number 2. If you are a presenter, you actually have a huge advantage over, people who use other media, say books or a web page. And that is in the fact that you actually have control over time. What's really cool about this is you can actually make use of time to simplify what you're trying to explain. Even if you have something that's extremely complex, what you can do is you can chop it up into little bite-sized pieces and sort of just stream it out over time, bit by bit. For me, making use of this normally results in having many slides at the end of the day, and the difference between each one of these slides are actually quite minimal. You see, learning something becomes very easy if you can first see a picture, and second, actually watch the picture change little by little over time. If you like, you can also use animations to help you. Say a moving arrow might be more meaningful than an arrow that just appears. And the key to making this all click together once again goes back to, you having to complement your slides. You actually have to time your changes well, according to what you say. This one is very widely applicable to many areas in, say, math and science, and also computer science, of course, because many procedures in these areas have a temporal component to it. For example, say you want to prove something in math, well, you're gonna have to start from step 1 and sort of work your way down until you eventually prove something. That's the temporal component, because essentially you start with something and it changes over time until it reaches the destination you want to go to. By being able to show this change over time through your slides, you actually impart the idea very clearly. Some things you want to bear in mind is to, most importantly, avoid skipping steps. This may be quite hard for you because you have to create many slides, but I think it's worth it because it really helps express the idea behind the procedure. Of course, if what you're trying to explain is very complex, hopefully after, the beginning, when things get clear enough, then you can start skipping steps. Remember that the point here is clarity, so of course, if things are clear, if your audience has actually internalized what happens step by step, then you can sort of speed things up, and that's not too bad of a deal. Number 3, ease of use. Now, so far we've looked at things that actually make your slides very clear. The next thing you want to do is to make your slides easy, so that, they're easy to absorb. To achieve this, you do need a little bit of an eye for design, something that I don't really have, which is why sometimes my slides don't look that great as well. But what you want to try and keep reminding yourself of as you're creating those slides is to actually minimize the amount of stuff on screen. Remember what we mentioned in a previous step. Make use of time. Don't try to squeeze too much information on screen at once. If that is not possible, and I know sometimes in some contexts it's really difficult to simplify your slides, at least have some means of actually redirecting your viewers' attention. What this means is you may want to actually dim off certain areas of the screen, you may want to highlight certain text, and also make good use of colors. Now, by that I don't just mean having many colors, I mean actually appealing to sort of the sense of the color. For example, green is associated with correctness, red tends to be associated with, incorrectness or warnings. So yeah, make use of this sort of implicit meaning behind the colors. As mentioned earlier, try to use images as much as possible to convey your ideas. If that's not possible, try to make use of words, and by that I mean like single words or extremely short phrases. Remember, you don't want your slides to be too distracting, so yeah, try not to have complete sentences on your slides. If even that is not possible, then bold the keywords in your sentences. Bolded words have the effect of just drawing the viewer's attention right to it, so yeah, do that so that at least the key points don't escape their attention. So there you go, those were your 3 tips. They are extremely broad and in fact, quite obvious if you think about it, but hey, applying it is much harder than just knowing it exists. As a very quick summary, remember that what you're trying to do is you're trying to appeal to intuition. You're trying to make things as easy as possible by breaking them up into tiny little chunks. So yeah, just bear this in mind every time you're actually creating a presentation. But yeah, that basically wraps it up for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, you're watching 0612 TV. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, consider checking out the rest of my work on my channel. Alternatively, you may be interested in a playlist of my earlier work on computing and computer science topics. If you'd like to show me some monetary support, I am on Patreon. You can find a link to my campaign in the video description. Of course, you can simply like this video or leave a comment. I'll be sure to respond as soon as I can. To keep in touch with my future uploads, do subscribe to this channel. And for even more updates,
check out the official Twitter account for this channel at 0612TV. Thank you for your support.